Welcome to Treadmill Talks with Shannon Maves, a podcast for athletes and fitness enthusiasts to pass the time during mind-numbing cardio while I use my no-bullshit coaching style to educate, inspire, and entertain. I'm your host, Shannon Maves. Now let's walk and talk. Hello and welcome to another episode of Treadmill Talks. Today's episode is the one with Ashley Hawk. Ashley is one of my dearest friends. I have known her for, I was thinking about this, I think it's been 20 years, and that is a trip to say. But I absolutely adore Ashley, and I'm so excited to have her on today. She is a registered dietitian who has spent the past decade working as a television personality, host, producer, fashion model, and was even Miss Arizona in 2017. She's passionate about combining her experience in mass media with her expertise in nutrition to help people feel empowered by the foods they eat and not overwhelmed by the information available. Ashley has appeared on NBC, Fox, CBS, and ABC, advocating for the importance of at-home cooking. She is the host of a national morning show called How Healthy Happens and the former host of a local morning show in our hometown of Tucson, Arizona called The Morning Blend. You can also catch her on social media sharing practical tips as well as creative and simple meal ideas. As a mom to a 3-year-old girl and a 3-month-old baby boy, she loves to share a creative and a personable approach to providing information ranging from breastfeeding nutrition advice to single-serve dessert recipes, while also relating to others who are trying to balance work, family life, and health-forward eating. When Ashley is not in the kitchen, you can find her training for her next marathon or riding horses. So I'm super excited to have her on today. We're going to talk about lots of nutrition stuff. So let's get into it. Ashley, how are you doing today? Thank you for coming on today.
Oh my gosh, I love that intro. Thank you so much, Shannon. I feel extremely hyped up right now. And as I'm sitting here in the pigtails, my 3.5-year-old did, I don't really know if I can live up to those accolades, but I feel like I'm going to try. And it's just an example of how life transitions so quick.
Yes, it does. I think back to like 20 years ago. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. This is what happens when you've got a 3-month-old baby boy. There's interruptions that we're preparing for, but yeah, it's life transitions. Definitely. I think back to when we met 20 years ago, we were different people entirely.
I know. I cannot believe that. Actually, that blows my mind that just time passes so quickly. And it really shows you that if you don't pay attention to it, it's kind of like just as those moments go by. But thank you so much for having me, Shannon.
Yes, of course.
I'm a huge fan of your work. I think you've been super motivating and inspiring through all these years, seeing your fitness journey. I also love Treadmill Talks. It's something fun that I listen to when I have a little bit of downtime. And I think the topics you cover are really important and relevant.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. So your area of expertise is definitely going to be postpartum nutrition. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's a really simple story that kind of goes into why I think this is so important.
Okay.
Yes, I have my master's degree in nutrition, and I'm a dietitian. And during my 4 years at school as a dietitian, there were about 1 week where we covered nutrition life cycles. And it was in the nutrition life cycles we talk about babies when they're born, pregnancy, but there's almost no part of that curriculum that goes into the postpartum body. It almost goes directly from pregnancy to infant and breastfeeding and what we're going to be feeding the baby. But we almost completely skip over the woman that carried this baby and delivered this baby. And we just kind of move on to now focusing on the baby. And this is the exact same thing I experienced in the hospital. And it wasn't anybody's fault. It wasn't anything intentional. It's not a knock on the healthcare system. It's just the sad reality that there's only so much staff that can help so many people. And for some reason, when you have a baby, you're in the hospital for about 48 hours and you have nonstop visits from nurses. You have a lactation consultant, you have a pediatrician come in, but not one of the handouts, not one of the people asked, what are you feeding yourself? Or how is your diet? Or how are you feeling? Or what foods are appealing? Or any sort of advice on what to eat. In fact, they even just give you a menu and you can check off what you want, but it's the exact same menu that everybody else gets. There's no general recommendations. So when I had our daughter Kennedy, I didn't really think much about it. But it was when I was pregnant with Kurt, it almost irritated me that
Mhm.
we just had such a lack of information for this postpartum woman that has gone through these huge changes, and she's about to go through even more changes in finding her new routine and becoming a mother, discovering what that lifestyle is going to look like. It's a whole shift, and we give her absolutely nothing to support herself. So that is where I kind of have just been trying to use my platform, use some of the information that I've gathered to be a bit of a support for postpartum women and learning what is the right way to properly feed yourself and nourish your body.
Well, that is really interesting, honestly. Like, I never, obviously, I don't have children. So that's why it's also really, happy to have you on here because you have an experience that I've never had. And I was completely unaware to that. Like, it makes sense. It's like you said, there's just not enough people to like specialize in all of these different areas. So I'm so happy that you are finding that niche and helping other women out. Like, that's phenomenal. And we kind of talked about, how life stages change so much and transitioning to that becoming a mom and stuff. And with all of those life changes, like our nutrition needs to change too.
It's 100% true. There's a new study that came out that say, women change. They're a different person after they have children. Physiologically, mentally, you are a different person, and nobody really prepares you for that. I think
Yeah.
you think, okay, kids is gonna, it's gonna change my schedule. There's gonna be other things to factor in, but it literally changes pretty much everything about your body, and that includes what you eat. There's also more and more studies coming out that show there are certain nutrients that can actually help prevent certain mood disorders, anxiety, depression. And
Hmm.
on top of that, it's this snowball effect where we've also seen, and this is kind of the scary one that stood out to me. And I thought, wow, this is really a place where we need to bring some more attention to. It's postpartum depression that is the number one cause of child abuse. So
Mm.
you really want to think, how can we curb some of these bigger issues in the world? It
Yeah.
comes with a singular approach. It comes with an individual approach. If we can take better care of, our community, our people, our members, and that starts on the foundational level of what we feed ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. It is interesting. You're talking about how like on a physiological level are a different person after you have children. I've talked to so many people where they're like, I hated pickles until I got pregnant, and now I'm obsessed with pickles. And like, there's like little changes that happen too. But then talking about postpartum depression, like that is a very real thing, and I've seen it with a lot of my close friends. And like, it's I think it is being talked about, but not to the extent that a lot of us talk about it, where it comes to, child abuse, things like that, where we see as outsiders sometimes people that are like, oh my God, how could you ever do that to a child? But it's like, you don't know like all of the underlying shit that can be going on sometimes. Like,
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's really crazy to think about how some of this information is out there, but we're not hearing about it. And once
mhm,
again, I'm not a finger pointer. I'm not blaming anybody. I don't think anyone's gatekeeping this information. I think there's just so many things happening in our world that unless you specifically dig into it, you're not going to find this out. So, for example, if women work with postpartum doulas, or maybe they have a midwife they're working with, they might get a little more information about, the right things to eat right after having a baby, or even 2 years. It can be 2 years to truly
yeah.
recover from having a baby that, postpartum depression can affect you. And if you don't have the resources, or
Mhm,
you just don't have the general knowledge, I didn't know what a doula was with,
yeah.
our first child. Then you're not going to hear this information unless you go and dig it up on your own. So, and again, it's not the OB/GYN's fault. Yes, it would be great if they could offer something, but they also have their hands full. They've got full
Yeah.
practices there, making sure that the woman is alive. This is undergoing a huge procedure. So I always try to make that really clear, where it's, when I talk about this, I'm not trying to point the blame anywhere. I'm just saying it is information that we should bring to the surface. And actually, as dietitians, I think that it is part of our job, and that is our scope of practice.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're doing this. And I love that I'm having you on this podcast, which is a free resource for people. Cause that's like you said, not everybody has access to those types of resources to get more information. So this is absolutely phenomenal. So let me ask you, are you able to give us some information on the like how, why, what foods to eat, like things like that?
Yeah.
what can a woman who is postpartum, which you said can be up to 2 years, is considered postpartum, what can a woman do to help herself, help to nourish herself? Also, because especially if she's breastfeeding, you're not only nourishing yourself, but your child as well.
Right, 100%. And that's actually what I kind of want to dive into. I think we should give a couple quick takeaways. I always believe working in media, we want to deliver a value right off the bat.
Okay.
So if
Let's
you've
do it.
only listened to this X amount of minutes, then we want you to walk away with something. So first and foremost, we have seen that protein is one of the number one deficiencies in postpartum women. And this is a really cool trickle down effect, Shannon, because the next piece of information is actually there's two amino acids, specifically tyrosine and tryptophan. I don't expect anyone to understand that unless you have a background in nutrition. But what you should keep in mind is those two amino acids, tyrosine and tryptophan, we've seen that a diet that is increased in tryptophan and tyrosine in the first 5 days postpartum, so from 0 hours of delivery up until 5 days, women that eat 25% more of those amino acids have a decreased chance of developing postpartum depression. So
Wow.
that's pretty huge actually.
That is a big percentage.
And again, I know that it can get a little nitty gritty when you're thinking specifically about amino acids. So let's just generalize that into protein, which protein's definitely having a moment right now. But for a woman that's just recovering from pregnancy and delivery and potentially breastfeeding, we've also seen that a dish that they used to recommend, it was zero point 0.8 to 1 kilogram or zero point 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram
Yeah.
was the daily recommended amount. And that was just for women in general, and that they applied that to postpartum and breastfeeding women. A new study came out where that was practically doubled. It's
Mm.
more like 1.4 to 1.6, which is a lot of protein. And for someone, I've been a plant-based eater most of my life.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to get into definitely was being plant-based, but we can go into
Yeah.
that in a little bit.
Yeah, so it can be hard to hit those numbers, but even just kind of giving yourself a baseline of somewhere in between. So a lot of the women that I talk to are on my social media page. I advocate for just trying to get an extra 20 or 30 grams in.
Mm.
We don't need to change this overnight. And again, there can be so many things rushing through your head when you've just had a baby. You've got the adrenaline, you've got all that serotonin and dopamine and all these great things happening. But at the same time, if you're able to say, okay, I'm not going to start tracking my macros when I have a 12-hour-old baby. But
Yeah.
if they give you an offer of, do you want to have, Greek yogurt or cream cheese on whatever your breakfast is, opt for the higher protein one, because that's really going to not only help you recover, but it's also going to help give you those amino acids that are also going to be so good for you mentally. So tip number one is just really try to get that extra 20 to 30 grams of protein in. And then tip number two is going to be watch your water. If there is one takeaway from this, if you know a breastfeeding or postpartum mom, just, kind of a friendly thing or a great gift, just one of those water bottles, maybe something that can help hydration. Because hydration not only plays so many factors into our mood and our energy level, our
Yeah.
memory, brain fog, all those different things. But when you're breastfeeding, you almost need to double your water intake. I think, the
Mm.
typical amount is they call it 8 cups of water a day. That's like the bare minimum that you should be
Yeah.
getting. And I also, want to acknowledge that probably a lot of your listeners are more tuned in with their fitness, but
Mhm.
just in case you are, maybe you're starting out, maybe you're brand new on your fitness journey and some of this is new, I like to actually look at the appropriate water intake, having your milliliters match your calories. So if you're eating 1,800 calories each day, you should be consuming 1,800 milliliters of water.
Okay.
That's minimum. That's
Okay.
that's what
Okay.
the
That's what I was gonna
recommendation.
ask. Because I was like, there's so many variables like geographical location, sodium
Mhm.
intake, things like that. But okay, so minimum. Okay.
Minimum, and
Yeah.
actually, that is according to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So that is if you're in a hospital, that's going to be the bare minimum water that they're going to make sure you're getting is
Hmm.
matching your milliliters to your calories. However, when you're breastfeeding, you almost have to double that.
Yeah.
And again, that goes hand in hand with knowing that calorie intake is also going to go up when you're breastfeeding because you're going to be
Yeah.
burning anywhere from 350 to 550, maybe even a little bit more when you're breastfeeding. So just make sure that you're matching that increase in caloric intake with increase in water. Again, that's not only going to help your mood, it's going to help your digestion, it's going to help your energy, all of those things. So those are my two big takeaways, and we'll kind of get into some more little small points, but aim to eat a little bit more protein and then
Mm.
drink that extra water.
That's really great. That's awesome, awesome information. I really appreciate that. Definitely. I okay. I'm trying to think.
I'm going to
So,
add a third one in real quick
oh
because
yeah,
I like to
yeah.
talk, I just like to truncate things with
Do
food.
it, do it.
So those are my two favorite ones. My third one, and I think this is really unique for people bringing home baby right away, is really try to stock your freezer with easy to go foods and soups. We notice that digestion can sometimes be a big issue that first week in having a baby. It's sometimes
Mm,
because if you happen to have an epidural at a hospital, it can really slow down your GI tract. So that's why doing some soups that have a lot of iron rich items in them. I love adding spinach, doing bone broth, chicken broth, anything like that. The iron is going to help balance out any blood that you might have lost during labor and delivery. And the water in the soup is going to help with that hydration. Again, we're getting that protein. So, doing some of those really hearty soups and having those ready to go in your freezer, that's a way to knock out all three of these little tips kind of in one meal right there.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, so we talked about how to nourish a new mom like right after giving birth and everything, which was absolutely tremendous with protein and water and everything. But now talking about, things like soups and things like that, having them on hand for afterwards, I think that's also great, great information. So can you go into a little bit more information for how the new mom who is busy, tired, and stressed, is either brand new to being a mom or maybe has a second child, which I've heard having two children is not double the work. It's like triple or quadruple the work from what everybody's told me. So what are some ways that a mother can have things like that, like soups and stuff on hand? Like what are some tips and tricks for that?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I always recommend, and this is like no matter what size house, apartment, wherever you're living, I like to have little like what I call snack stations or like breastfeeding stations. But it's not even necessarily for breastfeeding because even if you are formula feeding, you still need to have things on hand, and you could be sitting down on the couch with your baby for a while, and it could be you'd be surprised carrying a baby, like it doesn't really make it easy to get food into your body or to make food. So having things ready to go, having shelf stable snacks. I swore by getting a lot of those mini like kind bars, but I would just get the small ones. You can buy them. They're like
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from 100 to 140 calories, and they're just like the perfect amount of snack wise, or those nut packets. So getting your favorite getting your favorite shelf stable snacks. Try saying that 5 times really fast. Um, is a great way. Load your pantry with those, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the baby comes. Do your Costco order, or go to Costco and stock those up. Dried fruits, things that are actually going to keep you feeling fueled, but aren't just loaded with sugar, which can sometimes
Mm-hmm.
happen when we get those shelf stable things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I love to opt for different types of granola bars that I like the kind bars I think are great. There's other different types you can find out there, and they do the mini version, or you can do the big ones too. Doing the nuts, the dried fruit, things of that nature. I even like the applesauce packets. You can get
Yeah.
the sugar added ones, and I find those really refreshing, or just having some little drinks on hand and having those in little stations throughout your house. So whether that's going to be in a basket that you keep on the couch next to a tray, or keeps them in your bedroom in your nightstand, you obviously have them in the pantry. But that's one really easy way to have great snacks on hand. Then there's also meal prepping if you can. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are lucky enough that they can have parents come out and stay with them, in which case they're able to make them some meals, or your neighborhood does a meal train, which is great. I didn't really have any of those resources. I had my parents come and stay with me, which was amazing. And I had a friend bring a meal or two, but also finding recipes that you like, making those ahead of time and sticking them in the freezer. Easy things. Lasagnas, soups are great. Soups you can make into a Ziploc bag and stick in there. So that's
Mm-hmm.
a no brainer. Um, and even if you do certain breads or muffins, make them ahead of time and freeze them is a really easy way to make sure that
I
you're going to have some
I
good.
always recommend my clients. I'm like, listen, if you don't want to meal prep every week, do it once a month and just freeze everything. Like, cause that's what I do. Like, I'm not plant-based. I eat a lot of chicken, and I go to Costco and I meal prep enough chicken usually for about a month. And I put it in bags and I freeze it. And then when I'm out of the fridge, I just take it out and thaw it. I think freezing is like one of the best hacks.
Yeah. The other thing I just always recommend to new moms in general, this goes to food, but it also just goes to life. When someone comes over and says, "What can I do?" It's so you're so overwhelmed. You're like, I don't even know. Like, just give me a minute.
Mm.
So write out a chart or write out something, print it out and stick it on your fridge. And I just title it ways you can help or ways I need help. And it
Yeah.
literally just lists. So it's like, so if someone comes over, they don't even have to ask you. It's just right there. Take out the trash, give the dog water, fold clothes if you see them somewhere, or put clothes in a pile, unload the dishwasher if it's clean and empty, load the dishwasher. And then you can also include your favorite meals. So underneath that list of ways you could
Mm.
help, it's foods we enjoy eating. So for me, it's like, I love quiche. So I put, I love quiche, or this is the place I love takeout from, or these are my favorite fresh produce. Maybe getting to the market's hard, but if a
Mhm.
friend's coming over, you can just take a picture of that and say, hey, I love fresh berries. If there's fresh berries, could you pick me up some? Because then, your friend's there and they've got some nice things. Also, for you, it makes it easier too if you're kind of flustered and you're even like, I don't even know what I want, you know?
Yeah.
Just something that reminds you that's just literally stick it on your fridge.
I was gonna say, even from just like a mindset standpoint, sometimes that could be good just to like check in with yourself and be like, what do I need? What, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, what do I need? And like writing it out, I feel like that could also just help to like get rid of that overwhelm.
Yeah, and it is so true. I mean, it's something we've seen in dietetics and we see it play out in life. When food is more convenient to eat, we're going to eat more of it. So
Yeah.
stocking your fridge with the fresh produce that are going to be easy to reach for. So, for me, my family loves those baby Parisian cucumbers. And those are way easier for me to prepare versus some of those cucumbers with the thicker skin. So I make sure we always buy those and I can prep them pretty quickly. I get the baby carrots. Some people, don't really like baby carrots. I have no problem with baby carrots. I would rather my family be eating those versus
Yeah.
no veggies.
Yeah.
And again, those are ready to go right out of the bag.
Yeah.
So, being able to lean into some of those, slightly pre-prepared foods, there is no shame in that. Because again, in my opinion, it's always better to get that produce versus not. And if you don't have the time to prepare something that's
Absolutely.
straight out of the ground, then, it's okay to find something in between.
I totally agree. And that's one of those things. It's like you kind of have to like weigh out like what's worth it to you and not, because it's like there's some things where I'm like, do I want to spend the extra money on this, where it's like I hate dicing bell peppers. Like I don't know what it is about it. I hate it so much. I know it's way cheaper to buy a whole bell pepper and prep it myself, but like I buy them like pre-packaged. And yeah, it costs more money, but to me that's worth it. Whereas other stuff I'm fine prepping. So it's kind of like same thing, like finding what's worth it to you. I was going to say one thing that just I kind of thought of after talking about all this with you, something obviously a lot of who I coach is different in like competitors. They're also busy, but not because they had a child, but they're busy and they're trying to hit their nutrition because they're trying to go to work, they're trying to do their lifts, their cardio, everything. And so what I recommend to a lot of them is Instacart. I think Instacart is one of the greatest things in the world nowadays, where it's like you can literally have your groceries delivered right to you. And so you could be like doing your cardio or while you're breastfeeding and put in your Instacart order while you're doing that, and then it's like,
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to lie, Shannon, I respect that. For some reason, I am of the generation, I am of the 90s generation where I still like to look at my produce. So if
yeah,
given the
yeah,
option, I will always go in person. However, and I get different people's opinions on this, so I'm like I totally respect that. But for me, it's like it's been really hard for me to embrace the delivery chain because I've had so many people be like,
okay.
just Instacart it, and I'm like, you don't understand. There's a small part of my happiness that I get from going to the grocery store, and it dies every time I have to pay
Yeah.
a $5 delivery fee. So that's me. But hear me out on this, and I totally agree. If you know exactly what you're going to get and you know the quality, then that is a great one. And if you enjoy that, if you enjoy having your meals or your groceries sent to you, then even better. Half the people in my neighborhood do that, and they look at me like I'm crazy when I'm like, I'm going to Trader Joe's. But that's just me. Like but I'm a dietitian. Remember, I studied
Yeah.
food, so like I'm really happy being surrounded in a grocery store of food.
Yeah.
However, Costco, I'm telling you, Costco for new moms, guys, this is the home run. You go to Costco, because all the stuff that you buy from Costco, not to mention best diapers and wipes, like that's the best price you're going to find on diapers and wipes. And they're all these really bulky things that are hard to carry. So you get your stuff delivered from Costco, and now you're not having to lug things into the cart, out of the cart. You're not having to deal with the lines. You're not having to push the giant shopping
Yeah.
cart. So I cannot advocate for the Costco delivery more. I think it's like the greatest thing
So,
that
fun fact though, and unless they changed this, so I actually used to work at Costco just for a little bit, and so when I was there, which was a few years ago, but so unless they changed it, you could actually Instacart Costco orders without a Costco membership too. So,
what?
uh-huh. I'm telling you, Instacart is like the greatest. And I'm with you on the produce thing because I love shopping for my groceries. Like I'm like you, I get like a joy out of it. Like it's fun for me, but some people hate it. Some people don't have the time for it. And then it's like produce. Yeah. It's like, is this person going to pick me like a ripe avocado or not? You know what I mean? You don't know what you're going to get. But I think that's where you can also get that like the like pre-packaged produce where it's like you already know exactly what you're going to get. So
That's true. That's true. And I have done the Instacart and it is pretty amazing. Like I've
yeah.
definitely, as you mentioned, it's a side tangent, but I work in television and I do a lot of live food demos where we're actually working with
Mhm.
food. And there have been times where it's 8 p.m. and I'm doing a segment 7:30 the next morning and I'm like, I forgot to get the salsa and I need
Yeah.
salsa and I need tomatoes to go with it. And the fact that I could put it in my Instacart and have it on my doorsteps in 45 minutes,
Yeah.
even my husband was just like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I did pay a little bit more for it, but it was
Yeah,
like the
for
convenience,
sure.
totally worth it.
And that's where it's again, it's like you have to kind of weigh out like what's worth it to you. Like what do you want to spend the money on? And then it's time versus money and blah blah blah. So,
I know.
but
The
okay,
food
so
delivery, I think
speaking of
I
that,
could debate this for hours.
going back to your experience in television, I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned before we started recording. You had made a comment about setting the stage with your food. And I loved how you explained this because you talked about how you learned in television to set the stage for whatever you're filming and how you've applied it to your life with setting the stage with food. So you explained it way better. So if you want to go ahead and dive into that.
Yeah, of course. Well, so I worked in reality TV. That was my first job out the gates before I became a dietitian, before I even knew what I wanted to do with my life. I definitely like did not want to go into reality TV, but when you're young and again, it was like when I was getting out of college, there was a major recession. So it was like, hey, if you got offered a job, take the job. And
Mhm.
I got offered a job working in reality TV, doing producing and development. And something I learned there, this was like right when the Kardashians were coming up and all the reality TV stars. I remember my bosses always being like, it's not scripted. It's not scripted. Our shows, because people would always, that was the first question they asked. Maybe
Yeah.
today it is. This was 12 years ago. But we would always say, we don't script it, but we set the stage and then we let the characters play it out. And I see that exact mentality in life in general, but especially when it's your home. Like I think of my kitchen, I think of my pantry, I think of like our world as we're setting the stage as parents. So the same way that if I am producing The Bachelor, I'm going to put a bunch of people in a house. I'm going to give them I'm going to have an unlimited open bar. I'm going to make them super tired and kind of cranky. And I'm going to have some catty girls that might be talking behind your back because you know what? That is going to up the stakes on the drama. I'm not telling Dana what to say about Caitlyn, but I know that Dana's really sensitive. And if I give her too much, if she's offered too much wine, she's going to take it. And who knows what's going to fly out of her mouth? It's probably going to be entertaining.
Yeah.
So that is how they set the stage. How we set the stage as parents and in our day to day life is if I have my husband constantly, I notice how I already put it on my husband, but if my house is full of treats and daughter's over there, I don't want to say cupcakes, but if it's full of all these different things, if it's full of cupcakes, donuts, cakes, frosting, then every time we open the pantry, she's going to see that. And it's going to become this constant battle of her saying, I want that, and me constantly having to say no. But guess what? If I just clear those completely and I have some of the cereals that I like, I have some of the bars that we like, some fresh fruit, those are pantry things. If in the fridge, I have, the sandwiches we like, the cheese, the sliced turkey, the pastas, still really good foods. We're not depriving her of anything, but we have a special section, which is for our treats. Maybe we have some cookies we made, maybe we have some chocolate chips, things like that. Then I have just set myself up for success. I've set the stage for my daughter to ask for things that are easy for me to say yes to
Yeah.
versus setting the stage for her asking for things that are going to be a constant battle. And
Yeah.
again, it's hard, especially believe me, from people that might have the mother-in-law or the grandma that walks in with those bags of candy. It is so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
But that's also where, you kind of have to say, is it going to be worth the battle? So I'll tell you, after Easter, I was gone on Easter Day. I flew back into town. And, it's just freaking chocolate everywhere, Shannon. There's
Yeah.
chocolate everywhere. There's like mini eggs rolling out of everybody's ears. And I let it go for one night, but then the next morning, I just knew this was going to become an argument every single time. So what I did was I took all the eggs out of took all the candies out of the eggs. I put them in a big bowl, not a see-through bowl, a bowl that just has a label on it and it says candy. And she's allowed to pick one piece each day. And
Yeah.
that seems to be kind of like what's working for us. And again, I mean, I'm not a stickler with these things. I think it has to be really realistic. You want to limit your added sugar intake. You want to limit your sugar intake in general, especially for kids. You also want to watch your salt intake when it comes to kids. So that is why we do want to put a cap on these. But again, it's just, you can't control how much food your child puts in your mouth, but you can control what you offer them.
I
So those
absolutely love,
are kind of
yeah.
messages.
No, I love that with the setting the stage, but also you're talking about, the things that she can see and access and has to ask for and stuff. But also like when it comes to taking care of yourself, I think the same things apply where it's like, I know for me personally, like I have my pantry and I have treats and stuff because I'm a huge advocate on all foods fit and everything in moderation. But like my chocolates that I love, like I have them up high. So they're not at eye level. So that when I open the pantry, I'm not as tempted. So that when I go in and I'm like, okay, I want my chocolate, I'm going in intentionally knowing, okay, I'm grabbing up here for my chocolate and it is less tempting. Same thing with the fridge and on the counter and all those things. So I think those same things that you talked about with your kids apply to yourself. And we also talked about the importance of taking care of yourself first, especially as a mom. Because, I always tell my clients, you can't pour from an empty cup. And you need to, or the other analogy, you need to put your oxygen mask on first before you can take care of somebody else. It's that same thing.
It's so true. And you know what? I've been there where there are moments where it's like, I am starving. I just can't come in from running errands. I'm starving. Baby's fussy. Kennedy's running around asking for something. And it's almost like it sounds ridiculous. We've got groceries everywhere that I need to put back in the freezer, things to do. But I'm like, I've got to eat something right now.
Yeah.
Or things are going to plummet really quickly. And again, that's where having some of those things on hand, like the weeks that I'm able to make myself some trail mix cookies or something, or some trail mix muffins, versus I like to make a lot of my own baked goods. It's just a really good reminder for me to, stay in touch with what I actually find filling versus just eating random snacks throughout the day. I'm a grazer. I've kind of been most of my life. That's just what's been my lifestyle, and it's not the best thing. It's not the worst thing. But
Different things work for different people.
different things work for different people. But just as you said, time and time again, it's whatever's on the counter is usually what you end up eating, right? So just trying to be intentional about that. And if that means meal prepping some of your fruit, if that means pre-slicing an apple or having some snacks ready to go, then it's worth putting in that extra time to do that for yourself. And it's funny, people say, "Oh, just meal prep at night." Well, we have kids in our houses at night too, which can be tricky. So maybe it's not necessarily, meal prepping days in advance if you're kind of a new mom getting into the fitness routine. Maybe it's just finding simple things that you can do ahead of time that work for you. And a lot of that goes back to, if it is trying to have leftovers in the fridge, keeping your leftovers, or making double batches of things, or buying some of those pre-made things that just take one step out of it, like your pre-peppers, great example. If that's worth spending the extra $2, but when you walk in, you're actually going to eat them, 100% worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Cool. So one of the other things that I wanted to, I mean, this is a slightly off topic. So if you want to cover anything else before we get into this, let me know. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was we mentioned that you are vegetarian, plant-based, and that can be a very, very healthy and nutritious lifestyle, but it can also increase the likelihood of some nutrient deficiencies. And I know we talked about specifically things like iron and stuff. So can we kind of just like shift gears a little bit and talk about for anybody who is vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian, or any type of plant-based, what they can do to make sure that they are not creating deficiencies?
Yeah, I always recommend getting your blood work checked, every year or every couple of years, just to make sure there's nothing going on there. If you're getting some weird signs, it just never hurts to get your blood work checked.
Yeah.
As a vegetarian, I did have iron deficiency anemia during both my pregnancies, but it kind of balances out. And as women, there's different, ties to your menstrual cycle too. So kind of keeping an eye on that. Calcium and vitamin D are also two common deficiencies. with vegetarians and vegans. So really keeping an eye on if there are going to be gaps in your diet, and if so, how you can fill those. Is it adding an extra serving of a fortified plant-based milk? Is it potentially taking a supplement, finding something that you trust, doing a little bit of research on that? Um, or, for me, protein powders, I get a plant-based protein powder. I really like it. You and I have had this conversation many times because I think it's amazing that you're always able to hit your protein goals without any sort of protein bars or supplements. My lifestyle, I've kind of
Yeah.
always had to have some sort of protein bar or shake on hand.
Understandable.
But I
Yeah.
just make sure, I try different ones. I look at the ingredients, make sure that they work for me. Um, so those are things to keep in mind. The major nutrients, though, circling back on your question, would definitely be that calcium, vitamin D, iron,
Yeah.
and your B
So,
vitamins.
and B vitamins. So, what are some things, and I don't know if you're even able to say this as like any type of general blanket statement, but what are some things that you could consume to
Yeah,
support those and get that
great
iron,
question. And
calcium, vitamin D, and B?
yeah, so I love my plant-based milks. I like almond milk. A lot of people call it, tastes like socks. But
Socks?
well, a lot of people think it tastes like socks.
Oh, I've never heard that. I love almond
Almond milk.
milk.
I love
I've
almond
never.
milk too. But I've met some people that are not as enthused about it. But almond milk is fortified with calcium and vitamin D.
Okay,
So
cool.
and so are some soy milks if you like that, or you can also find some other plant-based milks that are also fortified. So those are great. So some of the plant-based milks, there's almond milk, soy milk. You can find some rice milks that are going to be fortified with vitamin D and calcium, and those are really helpful. If
Okay.
you eat yogurt, those are good too. Yogurt's a great source. The Greek yogurt has a good amount of calcium and vitamin D. For the B vitamins, I love nutritional yeast. I think nutritional
Hmm.
yeast is one of those underrated nutrients. You can find it at your grocery store where it's really only a couple dollars. It's also got
Is
a
that like in the
great,
baking aisle?
usually, yeah, sometimes
Okay.
it's in the baking aisle. It's like a yellow, it's almost got like a cheesy, nutty taste to it.
Yeah,
It's
I've
really
seen it.
delicious.
I don't know if I've ever had it. I've seen it though.
It's so good on pastas. I bake with it sometimes. It's
Oh,
good on a lot of different things.
cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Those are all really good tips. And then, yeah, I was talking about the protein. We have talked about that. And for me, it is easier being that I do eat meat and everything. I can have chicken and turkey with every meal and I don't get sick of it. But when you are plant-based, it is harder to hit that protein goal without going way over on your calorie goals because anything you're eating that's plant-based, it's even though it's very nutritious, in order to hit that protein you have to eat so much more of it, and when you eat so much more of it you're also eating so many more calories too, so it can make it very challenging for sure. So that's when I think supplements are, I always say supplement should be supplemental, and if you are plant-based, I think it is okay to supplement with
Yeah.
protein.
But that's also if you're plant-based, kind of doing a little bit of research, like I really like tempeh, tofu, some of those things that are still,
Yeah.
pretty natural in terms of it's not like some people like the impossible meat once a week or so, but I wouldn't advocate for eating that too often. You really want to treat like the impossible burgers the same way you would treat a burger where you don't really eat them
Yeah.
every day. It's more of a special occasion. But I love tempeh. I think that's great. And same with tofu. So finding ways to make that work for you.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, I think we covered a lot of really good stuff. Was there anything else you wanted to go over that we didn't touch on before we wrap things up?
No, I think one thing that's really important just to keep in mind if you're a new mom, if you're a mom, or if you're just kind of new into your fitness nutrition world, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. There's great
Yes.
resources. You're a great resource as a coach. But even if it's something you might not know, maybe they are pregnant or maybe you are breastfeeding and you want to dive into a little bit more, social media has a lot of good information, but you want to fact check it. So really make
Hmm.
sure that if you're following someone, find out what their credentials are, because anyone can go out and become a nutrition expert. Being a dietitian is a little bit different. You actually
Hmm.
have to come from an accredited school. There's an academy. You have to pass an exam. So really make sure that you know where your information is coming from, because this is your body. It's not something you want to take for granted, and it's not something that you just want to play a guessing game about.
Yeah.
So if you are getting information from social media out there, make sure to fact check it. But it is also great how much good information you can get from the right accounts.
Yeah, I agree. I'm torn on the social media thing, especially in the fitness world, because there's so many fitness influencers that get millions of followers because they show some crazy new exercise. And I look at it as somebody who's been in the industry for 16 years, and I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, that's not targeting any muscles. Like, it just looks cool. So they get all these followers. So it's like you said, like, fact check things, like look at who you're following. Are they a reputable person to be following or not? I think that's definitely a good tip for sure.
And if you're hearing this and you have direct questions, feel free to go to my page. I'm Ashley Hawk RD. You can shoot me a message and I can always put you in contact with somebody that or an account that does know more about it.
You took the words right out. The last thing I was going to do was ask people where they can follow you and where they can contact you. So there is, and I'm definitely going to link that in the show notes. So Ashley, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you for listening to Treadmill Talks. If this episode taught you something, lit a fire under your ass, or at least helped you forget how long you've been walking in place, please leave a review or take a screenshot to share on your social media. Don't forget to tag me at Shannon Maves so I can give you some love right back. And thanks again for listening to my Treadmill Talk.